So you don't have any money, but you want to invest in real estate? How does that work? Well, good news, Stacker. You're going to find out today. Hey, welcome back to the Stacky Benjamin Show. I'm Joe Saul-Sehy, the host and creator of Stacky Benjamins. And today we're going to share with you a strategy that takes fewer dollars up front and allowed one woman, the woman you're about to meet, to buy 34 doors in 5 years. It's going to be an amazing ride. And what I love about what we do here at Stacky Benjamins is we interview smart people who've done things that other people thought were impossible. And you're going to see how what Mel did is nowhere near as impossible as you may think. Benjamin Franklin did a lot of stuff like this. So can you. Hey, to see other videos like this one before we get going, hit the subscribe button so you get access to all of them and help other people building their stack, right? Starting their foundation. They might not have enough money to buy that first property, so they think. Hit the like button on this video and they'll see this too. So, all right, you want to buy real estate. Couple notes about this discussion you're going to want to focus on. Mel Dorman thought that wealth equaled evil. She worked hard. She was still a dumpster diver. You're going to find out right away because she was so poor. You don't have to stay poor. It took a big calamity in her family to flip the switch so that she saw that there could be enough wealth for her and her neighbors around the very next corner. And it's a powerful thing she shares about building community while you're also making sure that you're financially stable. Second, there's these terms in finance that seem confusing and they seem ugly. One of them we're going to cover today. You know, when I first heard that this was the secret to Mel's success, I was turned off. It's called seller financing. Oh God, who wants to talk about that, right? Well, you're going to find there's a lot of upside to getting over that little hump of the terminology. And it's the same with a lot of things. Roth IRA, right? 401k, IRS Rule 72T, like all these crazy things. Well, seller financing is another one of them. And you find that the words are tougher than the strategy. If you start executing this simple strategy, there's a ton of upside for you, like there was for Mel. You know, I'm going to throw in a third one as well while we're at it. We're told by banks that the traditional way to buy real estate is the best way. Well, of course they're going to say that. That's how they make money. Always remember how people make money when they're giving you their point of view. Finally, a warning. I love that Mel shares this warning, and I'm going to second it. There's no such thing as a free lunch, stackers. Unlike those TikTok dudes you see telling you that real estate can solve all your problems, these other YouTube videos that show that, you know what? This is a phenomenal strategy, which is why you're here. But it's still going to be about careful planning and execution to get where you want to go. So today we're going to roadmap that out for you. You still have to execute. And I'm super excited to see you get rolling on seller financing. And I know you got it in you because you already made it through the introduction, right? So let's do it. Let's jump into my discussion with today's mentor, Mel Dorman. Stackers, I love a great story about community and creativity. Mel Dorman's here to tell it. How are you?
I'm doing so good, Joe. How are you doing this morning?
I am good too. And it's so funny as I'm getting to know you, I just feel like we're singing off the same song sheet. You are all about community and helping your neighbor.
Absolutely. I love it.
I'm not sure where to start. Do we start with you dumpster diving? Do we start with, I love it. What'd you say in your TEDx talk? You were turning garbage into
debris.
Yeah,
debris into charcuterie.
That's right. So good. Is there a key when you're dumpster diving to doing it right?
You know, at that time, it was about going around 1 or 2 in the morning, right when the night manager was leaving and they were done with their shift. And then, get in and out as fast as you can.
Yeah, right. And not starving. I mean, you're dumpster diving because you have no money.
Yeah, at that time, we graduated in 2009, so most students who graduated didn't have any money. So we were making ends meet, and honestly, we ate like kings and queens. Like, Trader Joe's throws a lot of good stuff away.
Well, and you even said in your TED Talk, which we'll link to in the show notes, you had like a methodology. There was a bunch of stuff that the expiration date hadn't even come by yet.
Yeah, we were getting steaks that would expire like 3 or 4 days later, and so we just stick them in the freezer, and we had an entire meat freezer, which, I mean, which college grads do you know had an entire steak freezer in
So good.
2009?
And
Like
and all from Trader Joe's.
all Trader Joe's. Yeah.
That's phenomenal. Now, it's funny, Stackers, because when OG and I were talking about you coming down, that we were going to talk about seller financing, and you're like, what the hell are we talking about dumpster diving? But it all is this idea that initially you're struggling, you're dumpster diving. Why did you go to Africa?
Mm. In my undergrad, I was a global studies major. And so I went there to teach English and to do study on HIV/AIDS. So it was really part of my
Wow.
curriculum.
Yeah. And how long were you there?
I lived there for 4 months in a rural village and then in a slum in the city of Kampala.
I want to get to the to the Robert Kiyosaki part of this in a second, which we'll
Yeah.
get to, everybody. But before we do that, what else did you learn in Africa? Because I feel like that type of experience could teach you so much.
I learned a lot there, but I'd say a lot of my more formative international development work was when I lived in India, in Kolkata, India, helping women out of sex trafficking.
Oh
That
no.
was illuminating, just to see how, all these women had been trafficked, but they were stuck there because they couldn't pay the pimps off the money they owed, for having been stolen from their family and told that they owe this debt now. And so that was the first time I really saw how debt could control people's lives.
Wow. Oh, that's horrible.
Hmm.
Cheryl, my spouse, did part of her training in Mumbai, and she
Oh,
was
wow.
working at a children's hospital where most of these children did not have families,
Hmm.
and just very
Hmm.
similarly ugly story, completely
Yeah.
different stories than your stories, but similar.
Yeah.
And she loved it, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
She loved India so much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an amazing place. The people are so generous and kind, and I learned a ton about international development that actually really informs my practice now with seller financing.
That's funny. I'm going to ask you about that because I can't figure out how the hell that would like how would that translate. But before we get there, so you're in Africa. You
Mhm.
have graduated in 2009. You're seeing how evil banks can be,
Yeah.
and a lot of capitalist stuff that's falling down can be. So I would bet that would help make me kind of negative. Then you're seeing
Yeah.
all these people in this income disparity, and that would make you negative. And then you're in Africa, and this kid shows you this Robert Kiyosaki book. What
Yeah.
happened there?
Yeah, so I'm living with this rural family in the middle of nowhere in Kampala. I'm the only white person. Most people are scared. They've never seen a white person before. So I'm this anomaly. And I remember one day the 16-year-old cousin comes over and he's holding this book and he's like putting in my face, you got to read this book. You got to read this book. So I pick it up and it says Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I flip over the cover and I'm like, this is another American book about making money. Those selfish Americans, I want nothing to do with them. And so the kid was like begging me, please keep it for like 2 weeks. I'll come back and you can just read it during that time. And I said no. I was like so principled, and I just gave it back to him. I was such a fool.
Well, I don't know. I mean, on one side, yes, but it was how many years later then that your dad started to have issues?
Yeah, so like speed up about 7 years later, I graduated college. I had lived in India. I had done all this work, and I came back having done international development work, helping people in third world countries. You know, coming back to the United States and realizing that I was the financially disempowered one because my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's as a 67-year-old, and he was the breadwinner.
67, so young.
Yeah. Hmm.
I have
Yeah.
friends that we found out that she had Alzheimer's maybe 8 months ago, and
Mm.
then I found out just a few weeks ago that he has Alzheimer's.
Oh,
This
goodness.
beautiful couple in our community, and they have no children to take care of them, but you're tasked with helping to take care of your dad.
Yeah, so I mean, I was a 23-year-old. I had $10,000 in my checking account, and I thought, okay, well, my parents have some sort of retirement, right? No, they were like 60% of Americans just living paycheck to paycheck, no plan. And the doctors told us it was going to cost $7,000 a month to take care of my dad, to have home care. And so, we ended up doing something that was really challenging. My sister had lost her house in the 2008 housing crisis. And so she was living on the streets. She had developed a drug addiction. And so my family, trying to solve two problems at once without the safety nets that we used to have in our society, we had my sister, who was drug addicted and homeless at the time, move in and take care of my dad for the last few years of his life. And that really shook me.
Wow.
Mhm.
And what was your net worth at this time?
Like $20,000 maybe. I had nothing. Yeah, nothing.
So here you are. You're trying to come up with $7,000 a month to help your dad. Your sister has issues. Definitely have seen the worst of the crisis. What flips the switch for Mel
Mm.
and changes things?
So after I found out my dad had Alzheimer's, it took 7 years before he passed away. So right away at, this is going to sound so funny, but I was a social worker at LA County Jail. So you can imagine during the day I'm processing inmates, doing mental health care. And in between, I would just be reading books from like Bigger Pockets or listening to podcasts or just everything I could get my hands on. And 20 hours a week,
But how do you
I
choose?
educated myself.
Hold on. How do you choose Bigger Pockets though? Because I can't imagine a social worker who seems to be very anti a lot of capitalist ideas. Rich people are evil.
Yeah.
How the hell are you reading Bigger Pockets?
After I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I finally picked up that book when I was
Okay.
sitting in the jails going, okay, well, how am I going to help my family? And once I realized real estate was such a accessible way to build wealth, naturally Bigger Pockets was a free and accessible resource for me. So I just listened to like 300 episodes while I was sitting in jail as a social worker, not as an inmate. But I just listened to everything I could get my hands on. And by the time I got done with all those episodes, I had a pretty good understanding of what could go wrong and how to make it go a little more right.
And
Yeah.
and not only are not all rich people evil. I think some rich
Hmm.
people are evil. Some poor
Yeah,
people are evil.
totally. They're both.
But it depends on how you use your wealth.
Yeah.
And now you've got this really what I think of when I think of Bigger Pockets, and especially then, I think they still are now, but then just such a giving community.
Yes.
Like all these people just giving all this information, steering people clear of a lot of the shysters in real estate. But you still have this issue. You're in social work, not making a ton of money. Mel,
Yeah,
how
not at all.
how do you afford to buy a first property then to get
Mm.
on this thing rolling?
So while I was working in the jail for that year, I did overtime and I saved up about $50,000, which was remarkable for a social worker. And I started sending out direct mail letters when I moved to Portland. And about 3 months into it, I got a call from a woman and she was an out of state realtor and she wanted to work directly with me. And since I was a very broke buyer, I was not very competitive. So we talked about doing an FHA loan at the time. And I was absolutely shocked. So I had no real estate knowledge locally for Portland when I moved up there. I didn't know what anything was worth. But I was shocked to find out when the appraisal came back that it was $50,000 more than I was paying for it. And
Oh,
that opened my eyes. I was like, whoa, a $50,000 is what a social worker makes in a year. Like it was absolutely amazing. And so that really changed my mind about real estate, that it was a very accessible way to build wealth.
wow. But you realize buying this first one that it's going to be a long slog if you keep doing it that way.
Yeah, yeah, and they made like 150,000. They flipped it over 2 years. They were super excited too, so nobody was getting gouged. But yeah, it made me realize that money really matters. My family was going through this crisis, and if I was going to accelerate my timeline and help them, I needed to figure out how to make money in a much faster way. And so, off-market properties seemed like a great way to do it.
This is this is when I start to get excited because as our stackers know, real estate excites my son. It excites a lot of people in my community. I think it's a great way to build wealth. It's just not for me. But the next thing that you decide to do excites the hell out of me. So you find this guy, and I'm looking through my notes here, Kelly.
Hmm.
You find this guy named Kelly. Tell me about you and Kelly and you starting to explore this idea of seller financing.
Yeah, yeah. So let me just back up a little bit. Like
Okay.
right after I bought that first duplex, I was ecstatic. I was gonna tell my family and I was gonna be this hero and solve the problem, right? At
Right.
least for a year. And right after I closed on that property, my sister called me and told me my dad was dying. And so I was just shocked. And I did something really radical. I quit my day job as a social worker and I had about $16,000 in my checking account at the time. But the reason I felt so emboldened was I just learned about seller financing and I knew it was a way that I could build relationships in my community to build wealth. And even though I didn't have any money or a job, I knew that I could do that.
Wow.
Mhm.
No emergency fund.
16,000 bucks.
We're either going to do it or we're
Yeah.
not going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not something I recommend to your audience, but that's what I did.
No, but isn't it wild how there's these dramatic times in your life that change everything? That should just
Yeah.
change your complete outlook. And it seems like the switch must have flipped going, you know what? I got to do this.
Yeah. Watching my dad clock in for 50 years of his life with nothing to show for it. It's like the American dream crumbled in front of me, and I realized that it was this facade that it's not going to work out anymore if you just keep clocking in the rest of your life. And I didn't want that to be my life. I wanted to work for like 5 more years and have financial independence. So that's what I set out to do after that point.
You know, you wrote this in your book, and it's very true today. Part of what I like that you wrote was you realize nobody's coming for you. You look at all the vitriol happening in Washington, D.C. You look at the chaos of, with politicians around our country. They're not coming to help.
Yeah.
There is nobody coming to help.
No.
You have to do
Nope.
it yourself.
Yeah. In your corporate job or even your government job that feels secure and stable, it's really not. The only thing that you can control is what you do in the world. And I wanted to learn a way to create value for other people and solve their problems. And I knew if I could do that really well, that the money would eventually follow.
It's so exciting that you decide that your community is the answer, not just to your issues, but maybe to your community's issues. Like bringing people together can help lift all ships, I guess they say. So does that bring us to Kelly? Are we?
Yeah.
Let's talk about Kelly, because this, as you can tell, I'm a little excited, Mel.
Yeah, I wanted to just give you that backdrop so you can see how desperate and poor I was when I met Kelly.
Well, and not just poor, but I could also think, despondent and disillusioned.
Yes.
Like I feel like a lot of people are. So then how do you meet Kelly?
So, I'm sending letters to strangers. I'm cold calling about 10 hours a week. And one day, this guy, Kelly, answers the phone. And I say, Kelly, do you know who Joe is? And he says, well, Joe's dead. And he used to be my client. I'm a bankruptcy attorney. And so I thought I was in trouble. Like, oops, I'm talking to the wrong guy.
Gotta go.
Gotta go, yeah. But he was so sweet over the phone. He actually asked me to meet up for drinks later. He was hanging out with a few friends, and he's a 65-year-old guy from Manhattan, married, straight. I'm a queer lesbian from Portland. Like we're very different here.
Two people very much the same.
Yeah. And so we grabbed drinks that night, and we really just developed a friendship, and we stayed in touch. And about 3 months into the friendship, he texts me, hey, I got a triplex I'd like to sell. Could you do an evaluation on it? And I had been a realtor for about 5 minutes, so I could do that. And so I met up with him and we walked the property, and he said to me before I could even say anything, he says, I'd like to seller finance this to somebody. And I was like, oh my gosh, manifestation right then and there. I had been saying that to myself every morning. I'm trying to find a seller finance property. And here he was saying it back to me, and it was like magic.
How much did he want for the property?
Well, so we agreed, I did the evaluation. I said it was worth about $725. If he had a realtor, maybe $750 because they got to pay the realtor fees. But working together directly, it'd just be $725. And, of course he wanted 10% down, right? $75,000. So I was thinking, no way. I have like $8,000 in my checking account at this point.
16 is now gone to 8. Yeah.
And so I'm thinking quick on my feet. I asked him, well, what would it cost you to foreclose on me? And he thought about it, and he was an attorney. So he said, well, about $15,000. I said, great. That's all you need then, right? If I don't pay you, you can just use $15,000 of my money and foreclose on me. And he saw the logic, and he agreed.
And then I'm sure everybody walking the dog right now, listening to us, Mel, is going, okay, but she doesn't have $15,000.
Yes, exactly. You're absolutely right. So
you're a great negotiator, but you still can't do it.
Exactly. So I left that meeting that night and went, okay, I better pick up the phone. I'm going to rely on my community again. And I called through about maybe 5 or 6 people, and I found some lesbian friends of mine from LA, and they lent me $10,000 in a second position lien for an entire year. So when I got to closing, I only needed $7,000, which I had technically. And so it was $5,000 for the remainder down payment, $1,000 for the closing cost. But I had another little hiccup. I had a lot of hiccups as a buyer here.
Okay.
I realized that 2 of the units were vacant. So I told Kelly, how am I going to pay you in a couple days when I got no money coming in for that mortgage? And so we agreed to give me a 2-month delay on the first payment, which allowed me.
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. You can't do that with a bank, right? So,
no.
And so we just added those 2 payments to the principal. So he was making interest on interest. He's very happy. But I ended up recouping $6,500 of that $7,000 in those 2 months, which meant I was all in $500 on a triplex in Portland, Oregon, in a great neighborhood.
And from then on, it just gets better every month.
Yeah. It was cash flowing right away, about $200 because we did interest-only payments, which is a big unlock in seller financing for both the buyer and the seller. So I had plenty of money to pay the seller and to pay my friends in the second position. And after a year, it was cash flowing about $1,100 a month.
Wow. And
Mhm.
maintenance, is that after maintenance cost? Is that all in?
Mhm. Yeah, all in. Yeah, taking good care of the tenants through that process. Yep.
So 50,000 questions about this, Mel, that people are going to have. Number one is, a bank wouldn't have done any of that.
No.
And you point this out in your book on this topic, which we'll
Mhm.
give people that in the show notes as well and talk about it at the end of our discussion. But a bank's not going to let you do that. Why would he let you do that when there's so many people out there right now? There's, Goldman Sachs is out, but Wells Fargo is going out
Mhm.
buying up these communities. Why wouldn't Kelly just sell to them, maybe make more money? Why is he going to mess
Mhm.
around selling to you and giving you 2 months free ride before things pick up?
Yeah, I love this question. I think there's a misconception here that he would make more money if he sold that way, just like a cash buyer or even just somebody with a home loan, honestly, like a regular bank loan. Because the way the math works out is I end up paying him over $250,000 in interest over 7 years. So he's not making 725,000. He's making $1 million on that property. And had he sold it the traditional way, he would have been left with about 560,000 after taxes. And he'd have to go reinvest that at a 9% rate to try to beat what I was paying him at 5.5% interest, seller financed.
You're getting yourself in the game and you're making him more money.
Exactly. Yeah, he's saving on taxes. He's making hundreds of thousands of dollars. He gets to move from being the landlord to the lender, which is what's most lucrative.
Now he's a smart guy. He's a bankruptcy attorney, so he's dealt with numbers his whole life. But how easy is it to draw that picture for the average person now that you're dealing with this on a wider, broader scale?
The amazing thing is there are millions of boomers out there that were around during the 70s and 80s when, interest rates were 17, 18, 19%. So a lot of boomers actually have a working memory of either buying seller financed or knowing somebody at that time who did that. And so it's not necessarily that you're convincing them, you're just finding the people that already know, and then they already understand the advantages of it, and it's just partnering with them.
You make it very clear you have to be a very trustworthy person for this to work.
Absolutely. At the basis of this is financial literacy. And this is not about taking advantage of folks. This is not about getting one over or buying a property with little money and no credit. I mean, yes, you can do all those things, but at the end of the day, you have to be responsible because you're working with a community member. And that's even more important than if you were working with a bank because they are relying on you.
It's going to be somebody who's going to be your neighbor for,
Hmm.
and potentially these are people that know people. And now it makes seller financing easier because that is my
Hmm.
next question, Mel. How do you find likely people? You said at one point, I think in your book that initially you were sending out flyers and doing mail campaigns and all kinds of stuff, but really what has worked for you the best in finding the right who, as you put it, to
Yeah.
talk to about seller financing deals?
Yeah, so I think that direct mail, what I call love letters, is what I send out. So imagine like what you'd get from your grandmother on your birthday. Looks like a birthday card. It's hand addressed. It's even hand signed. Got a cute stamp. Maybe it's got Santa or a bouquet of flowers or something. So the open rate is really high, and all it is introducing yourself as a neighbor. Like I want to get to know you. I'd like to talk about your property. Maybe you're not ready to sell now, but at one point I'd like to be that person. And it's really just a building of a relationship. It's not very much about the property, it's more about the person.
You got to be targeting a group of
Mm.
people, though. Where do you find your targeting list?
Yeah, I reach out to local escrow companies and I ask them if they can create a list of either single families or multifamilies that haven't been sold in the last 10 years, have a lot of equity. They have a variety of ways of finding who has equity in their home.
Okay, but I'm sure they don't give you that for free. Is it inexpensive to pay for?
I mean, I develop relationships with my escrow company, so it is free for me, and because I know that they're going to be my escrow officer when I actually close the transaction, so they're happy to provide that information for me.
This is the important stackers of getting into your community and being a valuable member
Hmm.
of a community. Have you seen there's this movie that I love, Mel? It's called
Yeah,
Join or Die. Have you seen this movie?
I haven't yet, but I've heard great things.
We had the producers on back in late June, early July, and it's the idea of what you're talking about. You're using social capital to dig in and be a part of a community. I can't
Mhm,
imagine escrow people giving you that list for free. It seems like a very valuable list. But if you know the people
mhm.
and they know you and they know you're going to help build this community, that's a powerful place to be.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, there's softwares online too that you can get these lists from for pretty
Sure.
cheap too. But Yeah, I prefer to do everything relationally. I want to know my tenants. I want to know everybody that's on my team, my CPA, my bookkeepers. It's a team sport.
When you say you want to know your tenants, a lot of real estate
Mm,
people, we used to have a real estate podcast for a hot minute. And when we did, a lot of landlords would tell me that, they're a sucker for a good sob story. And it's so hard to go, no, you got to pay your rent this month. No, I can't have the excuse for the third month. Like, do you really want to get to know your tenants?
Yeah, for me, it really paves the relationship when those things happen. Folks will lose their jobs. That's just part
Sure.
of life. And so I find that if I'm showing up, day one with a gift in my hand and I'm, shaking their hand, getting to know them, and they feel that they have a comfortable relationship with me, when those things happen, it's more of a conversation. And usually I'm saying, okay, you got about 2 months of a security deposit to burn through, but then you got to move out. I don't want to evict you. Why don't you try your hardest to get a roommate or get a job? But if you can't, then let's just try to find you somewhere else to live. And when I give that grace, it's always been reciprocated with them actually moving out if they can't do the task, right? And so I find that again, it's just about community and relationships. And when you invest in that social capital with your tenants, then they're much more amenable when you need them to pull through too.
No, that's so kick-ass. When you're setting up this seller financing deal, I wanna go back to the initial deal because there's a few things here I think that our stackers won't understand. Number 1 is if you go to a bank, you probably have a 15-year or 30-year loan. I mean, there's a few crazy loans out there, but not many, and you could do an ARM. But you make a great point, which is you can structure this however the hell you want. It's
Yeah.
just between you and the buyer. Tell me about some of the different terms that you've used on
Mm.
some of these seller financing deals?
Goodness, we're going to get into some good stuff here. So, we talked about interest only payments. That's a huge unlock. It drops the payment by about a third. So, all of a sudden, you're cash flowing. It helps the seller because they're not paying taxes and capital gains. So, they get to delay that and make interest on that money instead.
You have
Um,
to point this out to them though, right? You have to say, "This is good for you because of it's gonna help you at
mm,
tax time."
Sometimes, I mean, a lot of them are trying to avoid that. And if they have an understanding of seller financing, they know that's one of the big perks of it.
Okay.
I'd say, I also include what's called a remainder beneficiary. So if they were to pass away, it's their ability to hand off that baton, that payment, that revenue source to somebody else, which is a big legacy piece for sellers. I would also say that I put in a first right of refusal. So should they want to sell the note early, let's say it's a 10-year note, but they want to sell on year one, I want to have the ability to buy my own debt back. And the reason is because often you have to sell it at a discount, and I want to be the one who gets that discount. So I put that in there as well. And then I get really creative, and this is the fun part. But I put some terms in there that allow me to take a promissory note, let's say it's $1 million, and I can chop it into multiple pieces, like 100,000 and 100,000 times 10 or whatever, or 200,000 times 5. And then I can move those pieces of debt to other real pieces of my property. And that creates equity. And I can do things like cash out refinances or sell and make that money. I see your face right now. You're like, what are we talking about?
I'm like,
You can
"How
move
does that
debt.
work?" Slow down a second, Mel. So,
Yeah.
you take this one big note and you chop
Hmm.
it into smaller notes.
Hmm. Yeah. Maybe I'll give you a case example. So
Okay.
let's say it's Monday and you're buying a house from a seller finance for $300,000, and they give you fantastic terms like 2% down, 2% interest rate, 20 years, right? It's amazing. But you don't like the house. The house is a wreck and you don't like flipping houses. So Monday night, you call your friend and you say, "Hey, flipper friend, would you like to flip this house? Could you buy it for 300,000?" They say yes. So the next day, you could move that promissory note to another property that you own. Your friend could then buy that property for 300,000, the flip house, and on Thursday you get $300,000 of cash tax free.
Ah, bang. Wow. How did you come up with that?
Yeah, I studied seller financing. Yeah. I studied.
But I love this idea. What's funny is we talk a lot about having a debt strategy versus just having debt, Mel, and CFOs of companies, they have a debt strategy. They will find the best terms that they can get, and then they will manipulate those terms as much as they can, where the average person out there just goes, "Oh, I feel like putting extra on this one random credit card." If you're going to be the CFO of your life, you really have to think through what's my overall debt strategy. Is there an opportunity here to get in over your head though?
Oh, absolutely. Real estate is something I like to think about it like flying a plane or becoming a doctor. you are working with massive numbers. You're dealing with housing, which are real people's lives. And to learn that type of technical knowledge, you should take the time to read books and listen to podcasts and learn from experts and get coaching, because you can either learn your lessons by paying a coach or a program, or you can learn them in the streets when you lose $50,000 on your first flip or something. So it's like it's an investment that's important to make up front.
Your closing cost at the end, I would think you need a good lawyer on your team who's going to write this all up. How much money is your typical closing cost then?
Oh yeah, about $2,000. So,
Wow.
with a bank, it's like if you have a $500,000 loan, you're probably paying $12,000, and there's going to be an appraisal fee, and there's going to be an underwriting fee, and there's going to be all of these hands, collecting that $12,000. But with a real estate attorney, it's about a 5-page document. It's a promissory note and a deed of trust. And the promissory note is just spelling out the details of the agreement, and the deed of trust is just securing it to the real piece of property so you can't run off to Mexico and sell it. So it's a very simple document. And it's actually, when you look at a mortgage with a bank, it's like a 30-page, really, really crazy document that has lots of teeth and lots of scary words. And
Every
when you
property
do,
I bought is
yeah,
50,000 words, and the person having you
yeah,
sign it doesn't walk you through it. They're just sign here, sign here, sign here.
yeah. Yeah, and we all
Yeah,
do, but those are the
sure.
bank's attorneys, and I'd prefer to hire my own so that we can really make it whatever we want it to be.
That is really interesting. You make this great point of not only are with a bank the terms are locked, with seller financing the terms are flexible, and you can agree on what helps you and your neighbor that you're purchasing from. You can help both of you by putting together the terms that work best for you. Closing cost fairly high through banks, and if they're not high, you're going to pay for it in a higher interest rate, right? If you
Yeah.
go with
Mhm.
a zero cost loan, you're going to get they're going to make their money somehow. Here,
Yeah.
it's $2,000. That's it. There's
Mhm.
maybe 10 more ways that seller financing beats traditional bank loans. You think about this, you get 3/4 of the way
Mhm.
through this transaction and it doesn't work. You'll lose your earnest money. You lose your
Mhm. Your
appraisal
appraisal.
stuff, flush all this money down the toilet and you end up with nothing if it
Yeah.
goes bad, if the deal goes bad. And yet that doesn't have to be the case on a seller financing deal. And yet you write, we think, or maybe you didn't write this, maybe this was my interpretation of what you wrote. We think a seller financing is kind of sketchy
Yeah.
and whatever, but you're like, but look at this banking system.
Yeah, I'm like,
How sketchy is
"What's
this bank?
sketchy?" Yeah, it's like, most people don't realize that because of the 2009 housing crisis and the bank failures, every man, woman, and child lost $70,000 of lifetime earning potential. And I don't know about you, but when people have lost me $70,000, I don't like to give them more of my money. And like the banking system has let us down, but our neighbors were so afraid of each other. But really, I mean, this is a much more practical way to build wealth and to do it in such a way that we keep wealth in our communities rather than sending our payments off to big banks and institutions.
If you want to dive into this, and man, I did after I heard Mel's story about coming from someone who was dumpster diving to 35 properties and it was 35 properties or 35 doors in 5 years.
Yeah, 34 units in 5 years. Yeah.
34 units in 5 years. That's
Yeah.
crazy. And your experience in Africa and just hearing how you went from somebody who thought that all this was evil to somebody who thought I
Mhm.
can merge community and creativity and make sure that everybody gets what they want. Like
Mhm.
what a powerful place to be. Mel's book on the topic is called Bank on Your Neighbor, People First Real Estate Strategy to Build Wealth Together. It just came out last month in September.
Mhm.
And I'm assuming, Mel, everybody can get it everywhere?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. I'm still getting it into Barnes& and Noble and that sort of places, but yeah, Amazon it's widely available, and I actually put it in podcast form, so if anybody wants to listen to it in the car, you can go to Spotify or Apple or any other place you can find it.
That was awesome when I opened up the book and you're like, you know what? The best way to learn is not just by reading, it's all these
Mhm.
different inputs, which you did while you were at the jail.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Mel, thanks for being such a great mentor for us today. I love talking community and congratulations on all the success.
Oh, thank you so much, Joe, this was amazing.
Isn't that great? So now you have the basics of seller financing. The goal is in place, but let's lay out your top 3 things. Number 1, you need to, first of all, set up your strategy. How are you going to get the word out? Mel used direct mailers. She talked about how to do that. How are you going to get the word out? Because this is a numbers game. Number 2, when you talk to people, you want to know what the win is for you and the win is for them. It's not just about you. It's going to work if you make sure you're the trustworthy person who does well for yourself, but at the same time, you're doing well for the people on the other side of this. And number 3, and I love that Mel covered this. Number 3, when things begin to cash flow, that you want to make sure those properties stay in good shape and that the renter is taken care of, because again, they're a part of your community as well. You can get paid. The renter can live in a nice place. And you know what? You can help out your community by doing well. All about seller financing. I love it. Being the CFO of your own world, I think, pays so many dividends. And we forget that it's not just about budgets or about money. It truly is about a better life for you and the people around you. I love the warm fuzzy that I get from today's episode. Hey, again, if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe to see all of our videos with all of our amazing mentors. I'm Joe Saul-Sehy. Please like the video. Leave your comments below. Let's chat about it. I'm Joe. We'll see you next time here. Go stack some Benjamins.